Hey, hello, and welcome to the Gardening with Maggie channel. Not really, but yeah, kind of. 2 weeks ago, I shared with you some tips on starting seeds undercover in late winter. So we sowed some seeds out in the greenhouse. I brought them inside. I showed you my grow lights and propagator setup. And so today I'm going to talk to you about what to do next. So once those seeds have germinated and you have young plants inside, how do you take care of them? And how do you get them prepared for going outside as well? And we also have some plants up here that I've sown quite a bit in advance, and some of them need potting on. And so I'm going to show you how to do that as well. The last time that I showed you my setup, this area with the grow light was pretty much as it is. A lot of the same plants under there, including these eggplant, these aubergines that need potting on today. And then over to the other side, I have a lot more small plants. And I've got loofah in here. I also have different types of peppers and chilies and artichokes, globe artichokes, and also the first of the tomatoes, quite young ones. Now, the step down, I had my propagator on, and we'll get to that in a second. But now I have a second grow light set up, and these are T5 bulbs. And the distance that I keep my plants from the light varies, but they're relatively close, the ones here on the top. Generally around 4 inches from the top when I'm growing on, but it just really depends on how the seedlings react to the light. If they're drying out, if they're starting to scorch or burn, that's when you want to create a little bit more distance between the plants and the lights. And when I do pot these up later, I'm moving them down under here, and there'll be a little bit more space for those guys. The propagator, I've moved down here. And again, this is a heated propagator. I've got one space empty, but the rest are filled with more of those pods. And I've got loads and loads of different types of tomatoes growing here, or hopefully growing here, germinating. There are a couple of things over here, both yellow, that I want to talk to you about. The first is my spray bottle. There's just ordinary water in here. I have it on a kind of a mist setting, so it's not too direct. And this is how I'm watering all of my young seedlings in the house, and actually a lot of my house plants as well. This is what I spray the foliage with fairly regularly. And when you spray the foliage of plants inside, it helps to raise the humidity around the plant leaves, and they really flourish in that. It's a very dry environment inside of our homes, and plants don't tend to like that too much. So using this to spray the leaves, but also to spray the seedling compost, really helps to gently water without disrupting the soil. So if you can, avoid watering your young seedlings with a watering can or anything like that. Even the little ones can be a bit disruptive. The other way that you can water these inside is to water from the bottom, and roots will soak up moisture from below them. And that's how I've been watering these aubergines. One of the biggest challenges to growing seedlings indoors are fungus gnats. And those are those itty bitty little flies that seem to appear out of nowhere. And they come into the house through compost. So potting mix, bags that you buy from the garden center that you have sitting outside. And as soon as you open up one of those bags, it's an invitation for the flies to go in and lay their eggs. And that's how they make it inside the house. Now, there are a few different things that you can do to minimize or try to get rid of them completely. The first is you can sterilize the potting mix before you bring it into the house. And you can do that by either pouring boiling water over it. I've seen people put theirs into the oven, and then obviously allow it to cool before you start sowing your seeds. The other thing is that you can exclude the surface of your potting mix from the flies by putting a layer of grit or perlite or something on top of the surface, a good layer, so that they can't get through and lay their eggs. Because it's not the flies that damage the plants, it's the larvae that hatch from the eggs, and as they're crawling around inside the potting mix there, they might be destroying plant roots. I've not had a huge problem with them doing that, but it's always wise to keep on top of them. Now you'll notice that I have quite a few of these little yellow tags around my grow light station and in various places around the house at the moment. These are sticky traps. Sticky traps work in that fungus gnats, the adults, are drawn to the color yellow, and these are very sticky. So if they land on them, they're not going to be able to fly away. They're kind of like fly paper. And the idea with them is that if you can catch as many as possible, then they won't have an opportunity to lay more eggs in your compost. It doesn't affect the eggs or the larvae that are maybe crawling around in there right now, but as soon as they hatch, they'll start flying around and they'll be drawn to the sticky. And that's how you break the cycle, the life cycle of the fungus gnat. I've moved the newer seeds that I've sown over to this window, past this little tiger. Let's see if we can get past without her snagging us. Hey. They're over here, and if you recall, I sowed a lot of different types of greens, and they've got these plastic propagators on top, and this really keeps condensation in, so it keeps the humidity up and also keeps it nice and warm in there. This first tray, I have radishes, spinach, and over here, 2 different types of lettuce mixes. And then on this side over here, I've got cabbages and cauliflower. On that far side, there's kohlrabi, and then I've also grown some bunching onions, which are here on the far right. The one that doesn't have any germination there, that is a type of turnip. It was old seed as well, so it might not ever germinate. The last couple of trays, these are ones directly from that video. The spinach has not germinated, not a one. And then the dill and the parsley next to it has. So you can see all the dill over here, these longer shoots, and it looks like a dill got over onto this side, but you can see the parsley is starting to come up as well. One problem that is really common this time of the year, and even earlier when people start their seeds a bit too early, is that their seedlings become leggy. And these cauliflower and cabbage seedlings are getting a little bit tall. They're not too bad, but they demonstrate legginess, so that tall stem there. And that happens because as soon as a seed germinates and the little seedling pops up out of the soil or the potting mix in this example, they need light. They need enough light to grow. And if they feel that they haven't quite reached the surface, the light's too dim, they keep growing and growing and growing. And that's how they get these spindly stems. And you avoid that by ensuring that they have adequate light as soon as the seed germinates. And it's more important for plants that you cannot plant deep when they're older. So a lot of brassicas, including the cabbage and the cauliflower, but also tomatoes and quite a few other veg, you can plant them deep, so up to their first set of true leaves, and they'll recover. But others don't take to that as well. So it's always better to make sure that your seedlings have enough light, whether they're growing in a greenhouse, they're in a really bright room. There's a big window here, there's one here, there's a skylight up here, so they're getting adequate light here. But I would say the quicker I can move these into the greenhouse, the better, because it'll be much brighter in there. So quickly, you might be wondering, why are some plants growing in these little modules and why do I have others in pots under grow lights? All of the different types of crops in these modules here, these are leafy greens, they're more cold hardy, and also these are ones that I know that I can plant out into the garden in about a month. So even less than that now. And so they are going to be living in these modules for the duration of their life in modules. They are getting a quick start in the house. I will be moving all of these out to the greenhouse as soon as they've all germinated, because it's now warm enough at night for them to live out there. And then they'll grow on a little bit more, and then I'll plant them out when it's time. The ones in pots, these are heat-loving and light-loving plants that would have difficulty growing in the spring here. And so I'm starting them off in pots and growing them on to give them a head start until the polytunnel is built, and that's where most of them are going. So I start them off early, I grow them in the house, and then they go out into the greenhouse or the polytunnel, and that's where they grow in my climates. We're back in the greenhouse, and this time I'm going to be potting on these young plants I've been growing on inside, and then I'm taking them back inside because it's far too cold in here for these guys. It's just a good working space out here, lots of light this time of the year. I have the potting bench in the shed, but it's just too dark and it's just much more pleasant to work in here. I've got a couple different types of eggplant and chili to pot up. The eggplant, some of them are growing in these little pods singularly, so there's just one plant, and those are easy enough to pot on. And some of them there's two, and you grow multiple plants in modules so that you can pinch the weakest one out. And I'm always torn when there are two really strong plants like this. I think I'm going to try to break this apart gently, tease it apart, and pot them up individually. They should still grow, just very gently so it doesn't damage too much of the roots. And hopefully they'll both grow on really strongly. Now, with potting on anything that comes in these little pods, whether they're the traditional jiffy pods or these cocoa coir pods that I'm experimenting with this year, you do need to remove the paper from around the side. And they are meant to break down. You will be told that they will break down, and then you will find if you try to plant them out into the garden, you'll see some poor plants, its root ball completely constrained by this fabric, and it just does not break down. So remove it before you pot them on. And plants that need potting on will tell you when they need potting on, because their roots will start to grow out the side or from the bottom of the pot. And so the idea is just to give them more space so that they can grow a healthier root ball and a healthier plant. What I'm doing right now is I'm working together vermiculite and peat-free potting mix, so peat-free compost, just like I was doing last time. And what I'm looking for is a nice textured growing medium. I would say it's about 1 part vermiculite to 2 to 3 parts potting mix. It doesn't have to be exact. And I've worked a lot of dry material into it. So what I'm going to do as well is I'm going to add a little bit of water as well. And it's better to add water at this point if the mixture feels dry, because it's moist already once the seed goes in. And so there'll be less movement of that seed around if you have to water it thoroughly afterwards. So that feels really good, nice and moist. All right, let's start with this aubergine, this eggplant, and this is one of the ones I've just divided. And I'm just gonna put some potting mix in, make a little divot, and then put it in the center and pot it up. And done. Move on to the next one. I've finished planting up all of the young plants. There are 4 globe artichokes. This is a purple globe artichoke variety. And once I plant these, they will come up from year to year because they are perennial and they do really great in my region. There are 9 eggplants, aubergines, and there are 2 varieties here. There's a variety called Moneymaker, which is a type that was just from a local British seed company, and then I was able to germinate the last of the Mitoyo eggplants, and I got those seeds from an American seed company called Baker's Creek. So there are 2 here. And I did notice when I was potting this up, now that I'm out in the natural light, that the leaves were starting to turn a little bit yellow. And that's a sure sign that the potting mix was low in nitrogen, which isn't a huge surprise because those coconut coir pods are very low in nutrients. They're really just to get seedlings started and then pot them on. And I should have actually potted these on a week or 2 ago, but hey ho, they'll recover, they'll be fine. And then lastly, we've got 7 of the space chilies. That's right. These chilies, they're called Hangi Zhao 8. They are a variety developed by the Chinese, literally in space. And when they were growing them, something happened up in space that this type actually started being extremely prolific. So they produce loads and loads and loads and loads of sweet chili peppers, so peppers really. And there is the occasional really spicy one though. And so they're very similar to the Padron chilies that I'm growing inside, which are also, most of them, the vast majority, 9 out of 10 are sweet. And then the 10% of them just super hot, just blow your head off. So really fun. The next steps with these is I'm taking them into the house. They're all going back under grow lights and they're going to continue growing. And hopefully by the time they've outgrown these pots, it'll be time to plant them out into the polytunnel. Now it has already begun its life. Josh and I have been preparing the site and putting in post holes. Oh my gosh, so much work. And Tuesday is when the actual construction begins. So depending on how that goes, next week's video might be a feature on the new polytunnel, and I cannot wait to show you because it is so unique. Not very many people have them. It's a very specific type, great for this climate. Or it might be a March garden tour showing everything that's happening here and at the allotment. So either or, it's going to be next week and the week after. Those are the 2 videos that are coming up. And if you haven't subscribed already, do make sure that you hit that subscribe button. And for everyone, click that little bell icon on my profile as well, and that will give you a notification for every time I have a new video out. Thank you so much for watching, and also let me know if you have any questions at all about the seedlings and the techniques that I'm using. If you've got a little bit of a confusing situation with your own seeds and plants and you're not quite sure where to go, just leave me a comment down below and I'll make sure to give you a hand if I can. All right, see you next time. Bye for now.